Hi, this is Pirates broadcaster Greg Brown. It's time for the 2-minute timeout with Joe Shuda, and now extra innings.
My guest is in his 24th year broadcasting Pirates baseball. He's known for his enthusiastic love of the game and the Pirates, along with his honest reporting of baseball news. In other words, when you listen to Greg Brown, you can be assured that what you hear isn't fake baseball news.
That's right. I'm very proud of that, Joe. Most times.
Greg, we're wrapping up spring training. How about telling everybody what some of the highlights of your time in spring training on and off the field have been this year?
Well, let's see. Of course, there's always the highlight of arriving from up north. The highlight of getting the broadcast started is always exciting. And then after about 2 or 3 games, you've had enough of that because they are meaningless. So you're starting to get a little anxious for the season to begin. Steve Blass often talks about the 3 phases of spring training where you're excited. And then in the middle, there's the little kind of a dull period. And the home stretch, which is where we're in now, is the anticipation, the excitement, and your determination to have a strong year if you're a player. I guess you could say also from a broadcaster's perspective. Really, to be quite honest with you, Joe, there weren't a ton of different moments. We're asked all the time by so many different people, and they're nice to ask whether they're down here or up north. How's your spring training going? Is it good spring training? Well, yep, it's been a good one. We kid around with each other down here. It's oftentimes Groundhog Day, but I'd say it's been a pretty kind of normal spring training. No real big ups and no terrible lows.
Greg, one of the things I'm concerned about is teams retire numbers, and I'm wondering in several hundred years from now, what will happen when they retire so many numbers? Will you have like number 175 and number 192? During spring training, you have numbers 89 and 93 and whatever. But what are we going to do a couple hundred years from now when they retire all the numbers from 1 to 99?
I guess we will have to repeat, which is difficult because down in spring training, Joe, we had that happen the other day where we had 2 77s in the game. There was a minor leaguer in the game wearing 77 and Austin Meadows wears 77, who is in his first big league camp. I hope it doesn't get to that point. I guess the Yankees will be the first team to have to test that out because I think they have just about every single digit and maybe every number up to about 50, it seems to me, has been retired by the New York Yankees. So there'll be a test market for the rest of baseball, I bet.
Do you think we'll go to the alphabet or possibly some type of symbol?
I think just that came to mind when I saw the 2 77s out on the field yesterday. One was in left, one was in right. One had his name on the back. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe you'll have to earn your name to be on the back, and that'll be the separator. Or as you say, maybe it's 15A, 15B, 15C, or maybe we go to 3 digits. The rumor is that there's going to be soon advertising on the caps, helmets, and or jerseys in the not too distant future. So I guess eventually jerseys are going to look like the suits that race car drivers wear. They're just filled with decals, and I guess that's what it's going to look like before too long.
A tough year last year for the Pirates. That's certainly one of the challenges of every organization. I think it's a great thing also about sports is that there's no given, is there?
No, and we were talking about this on the broadcast yesterday that probably of all the sports, baseball is the most difficult to predict from year to year and what's going to happen. I stand by the fact that last year at this time, if someone were to tell me that the Cleveland Indians would take the Chicago Cubs to Game 7 of the World Series, I'd have said, you're crazy. The Cubs almost appeared to be a given last year. They were so talented. They had made the strides the previous years. But again, you never know with injuries. You have to credit them, Joe Madden, for being able to take that next big step. But, be wary of the person who wears the crown, and in this case, the Cubs, because it is extremely difficult, in fact, in this day and age, to repeat. Whether injuries that they will indeed crop up, and whether they get players that are in key positions hurt, or just down years, poor performance. It's tough to stay up and frankly motivated, as hard as it is for anybody to believe that. It is a difficult task. You're talking about 162 games to try and win 100, which probably will be what it might take close to that to win another division, and who knows what goes into the playoffs and the postseason and eventually the World Series. So anything can happen. So much has transpired already with the Pirates. You get the guys, the World Baseball Classic go away for a couple weeks. You got the Jung Ho Gung incident. Knock on wood, there aren't any serious injuries, but who would have guessed last year at this time that we were hoping for a healthy Jung Ho Gung and what a full year might be for him, that he wouldn't be in camp because of his off-field problems in Korea. So anything can happen, and that's why I think baseball is so difficult to predict. It's such a long year.
You hear the constant talk about speeding up the game. I agree with you completely. Those visits to the mound, that's one of the simplest ways to cut down. But why is that not being addressed?
we laughed during the season last year when a rare intentional walk would be issued and the catcher would hold his glove out, go through the process, and I would say, well, that's about 10 seconds I think that baseball will save next year, so that's a huge step forward. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm a big Rob Manfred fan, the commissioner. I really think he's going to take this game to the next level. I think what he's doing is taking it all in. He's listening to a bunch of different ideas and not shutting the door on any of them, but that one is a bit absurd. I guess maybe just to show that baseball can at least take a step to do something. The visits to the mound is, Joe, I've been talking about it for years now. It's the easiest and best way to speed up the game, bar none, not even close. Make it anytime a position player, and especially those catchers. I mean, Yadier Molina's games, when he goes out to, just look at the World Baseball Classic, how many times he went out during an inning to talk to his pitchers. It's just constant. And then infielders come over and talk. Just make that an official trip to the mound, and you cut so much time and you quicken the pace of the game. That's the key. You quicken the pace of the game. I was thrilled that when I tweeted that out earlier this winter that it actually got the endorsement retweets and some comments from former big league players and including a current major league pitcher, Brandon McCarthy, quoted my tweet and said that basically, in so many words, it's the best idea and easiest to implement that he's heard so far. Who knows? If it gains some momentum, maybe they'll implement that easy idea. I've heard some pitchers say you can't do that because when a guy gets on second, you have to change the signs. You know, if you want to throw at a critical situation, you need to talk to your catcher. That's a bunch of bunk, a bunch of hogwash. To me, that improves the strategy of the game. I think that would make for more intense moments in baseball.
The other point is having the umpire being mic'd. And during the game, when you watch the game on TV or listen to it, usually the announcer is going to explain the challenge and the final decision and why it was challenged. At the ballpark, you're asking, what happened? What's going on in that play? How difficult would that be to have the umpire explain what the challenge is and then the final ruling?
Well, you're getting me fired up, Joe, and the season hasn't even started, and I promised myself that I would really bite my tongue this year because that might be my biggest pet peeve, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the broadcast booth and something like that happens. We go to a commercial break, and I take my headsets off, and I'm turning red. I'm livid about it. It is just the most ludicrous situation maybe in all of sports, that announcers to not know what's going on. Fortunately, sometimes through communication with PR people in the press box, we eventually can disseminate the information, but why the fans in the stands don't know what's going on, it's just absolutely ridiculous, ludicrous, and why they, as you said, why you can't, like the other sports have done. Baseball has talked about the reason why they've made some of these changes is because essentially other sports have done them. We should get with the times. Well, okay, if you're gonna do that, be consistent. Let the people at the ballpark and at home watching or listening, let them know exactly what is being challenged, what the ruling was, what is anybody afraid of. Perhaps someone is afraid of taking full responsibility for their actions, and they're afraid what might happen if it becomes known in public, which is, again, absolutely ludicrous.
Let's go on to your expression, raise the Jolly Roger and clear the deck, Cannonball Coming. How did that all start?
Raise the Jolly Roger was born before we left Three River Stadium, so it's well over 15 years now. Bob Walk came to me one day and said, all these other announcers have end-of-game calls, signature calls. Lanny Frateri's there was no doubt about it. Bob Prince, the longtime Hall of Fame voice, the gunner, we had him all the way. Howie Rose of the New York Mets, put him in the books. Marty Brennaman, Hall of Fame announcer for the Reds. This one belongs to the Reds. So it seems like just about every announcer for years has had kind of a signature game-ending call. I went back and forth with Bob. He's an agitator, as you know, Joe. He kept on me about it. I said, I don't want it to take away from the game. One day we kind of sat and brainstormed, talked about how when I was in the front office many years ago, I had made the suggestion to an executive vice president of the team that after the Pirates won, why shouldn't we, atop of Three River Stadium, put a gigantic skull and crossbones up to let everyone know the next morning who were unaware, perhaps going downtown Pittsburgh to work. They looked across the river. They saw atop Three River Stadium a big skull and crossbones pirate flag. They knew the Pirates had won the previous night's game, like capturing ships. And Bob mentioned that, the nickname of that is the Jolly Roger. And he said, how about hoist the colors of the Jolly Roger or something to that effect? And we whittled it down to, rather than hoist, I thought was too formal. I said, how about raise? And we got to raise the Jolly Roger. And it's funny, Joe, because I had been doing it for, again, a number of years, but the team was so awful. Nobody really knew it or paid attention. But then, when the team made the playoffs playoffs in 2013. It got a ton of attention. There was a front page story about it in the Post-Gazette. I actually had people across the country calling and asking about it, and it has really taken off. It has become kind of the worldwide rallying cry. I get a ton of texts, tweets, emails, Instagrams from people all over the world that are, raising their Jolly Rogers across the globe and want to take pictures of it and show it to us. And oftentimes we will show those on Root Sports, or I'll retweet. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger. It's just kind of cool. So as I said, it's kind of taken off, and it's the Pirates rallying cry, and it's something that Pirate fans can relate to and really neat. Clear the Deck, Cannonball Coming. My barber, young guy, about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, called me during a party at his house. It was probably midnight in San Diego. Had to be 3 a.m, therefore, in the Pittsburgh area, when he called me and said he had a call for me. He and his father and uncle were discussing it. One of them talked about clearing the deck. The other said, well, to finish it, how about Cannonball Coming? And I said, well, I'll give it a try, because I get a lot of suggestions from a lot of different people. And one day I threw it out on the air, and it seemed to get a good reaction. And about 2 weeks later, I actually heard Pirate players during batting practice. There were some pitchers actually taking early batting practice, and a couple times they would hit home runs, and I'd hear someone yell, clear the deck, Cannonball Coming. And once the player signs off on it, then to me it kind of comes legit. It's really kind of wild, because I've heard now commercials being run that talk about clearing the deck for the Pirates. And of course, even national beer commercials have talked about raising their beers in victory. So it has taken on a life of its own.
Finally, and this is a little touchy subject. We've known each other for a long time. You were offered a late night show on a major network. There were rumors that David Letterman, who loves baseball, he was leaving and you were going to take over for him. I know you love the Pirates. That had been a tough decision. You certainly also know Seth Meyers, and there have been rumors that you're going to be involved with his show. Greg, do we have a commitment for the next couple of years that you're not going to be leaving the Pirates and going to a major network and doing a late night show?
Well, because the start of this conversation, Joe, was no fake news, no baseball fake news. I can't say that for sure, because if I will tell you that, if you look at the ratings for Stephen Colbert, they have dropped significantly over the past year. I guess maybe that's as far as I'll go. I can't just say outright, because I'm sure this is being recorded, that I will not leave if offered a position. Let's just put it that way. I think hopefully rumors won't run rampant, that people accept that, and just know that I would love to stay the Pirate broadcaster if, and it's a big if, someone, again, I go back to the Stephen Colbert ratings, if someone were to call and make a significant offer somewhere, I wouldn't be fair to me or my family not to at least listen.
All right, well, it's on record. Greg, thanks for joining us once again. You'll be crossing the border, going north with the Buccos and to Boston, and then back home to Pittsburgh. Greg, thanks for joining us once again. Appreciate it, and beat 'em Bucks.
Thanks, Joe.